You know how every culture has its boogeyman? Well, for the entire galaxy, for centuries, that boogeyman was a species called humanity. Just a myth, right? A ghost story to keep everyone in line. But what happens when that myth kicks down the door with a vengeance? Let's dive in.
And these weren't your average campfire stories either. No, these were warnings. Whispers about this ruthless, incredibly stubborn race from some long-forgotten world that just, poof, vanished. No ruins, no records, nothing. Just this terrifying legend that once, a long, long time ago, they shaped the stars.
Except they were wrong. And with that one simple fact, everything changed. The entire galaxy's history, its whole sense of safety, turns out it was all built on one massive lie.
So how does a myth suddenly become a flesh and blood reality? Well, let's set the stage and see how this all went down.
Okay, so you've got this big bad, right? The Drek Dominion. They're just this relentless force, chewing up star systems left and right, and the so-called Galactic Council is basically just sitting on its hands. It looks like it's all over, and then reality itself just rips open. And out of this tear in space come these ships, and you gotta understand, these things are like nothing anyone's ever seen. They're not sleek, they're not pretty. They're just brutal, angular, battle-scarred machines built for one thing: war.
And then the transmission comes through. One single message. A deep, steady voice speaking a language that should be extinct. Just one line that sent absolute shockwaves of disbelief and fear across thousands of worlds.
So what happens when the biggest, baddest predator in the galaxy, the Drek, comes face to face with a ghost story? Well, let's just say their first meeting did not go as planned.
The Drek, of course, were arrogant. They basically laughed and fired off a plasma blast that would have vaporized any other ship. But the human vessel, it just eats it, absorbs the whole thing. And the human response? It wasn't fancy lasers. Oh no, it was raw kinetic force. We're talking rounds the size of skyscrapers that just obliterated the Drek's impenetrable shields like they were made of glass.
And for everyone else watching, I mean, the whole fight against this, quote, unstoppable Drake Armada, the guys who've been the galaxy's nightmare for centuries? Yeah, that whole thing was over in just 4 hours.
4 hours, and in that time, the humans took out 2,136 Drek warships. That's not a defeat, folks. That is a straight-up annihilation.
And the cost to the humans? Get this, less than 0.5%, 0.4% casualties. This wasn't a battle. It was an execution, carried out with this terrifying efficiency that just screams, we've been through hell and back.
So you can just imagine the Galactic Council, right? Watching all this go down from their comfy seats. Their shock pretty much turned into pure, pants-wetting terror real fast.
So the council starts scrambling. They're sending out diplomatic messages, peace treaties, you name it. And what do they get back from the humans? Nothing. Absolute stone-cold silence. And, you know, one of the counselors said it best. That silence was way scarier than any declaration of war.
And then, the real horror starts to sink in. The Council gets a look at the planets the humans have taken over from the Drek, and they're not seeing destruction. They're seeing reconstruction. Factories are firing up, defenses are going online. This isn't a conquest. This is an empire coming home.
This completely forces the Council's hand. High Chancellor Vexar, the big boss, decides she has to go meet them herself. And this is where we finally get the big reveal, the real truth behind why humanity is back.
So Vexar shows up, all ready to talk diplomacy, but the human leader, this Admiral Voss, he's not having any of it. He just cuts right through the pleasantries and calls them out. Oh, now you want to negotiate? Now that you're scared?
And here's the real disconnect. See, the Council's history book said humanity just vanished, probably blew themselves up. But Voss lays out a much darker story. They didn't vanish, they were watching. And they didn't destroy themselves, they were abandoned.
This is the gut punch. Voss explains that humanity used to be part of the whole galactic club. But when a huge war came for them, they called for help, and the Council just ignored them, left them to die. And the one thing you learn about humans? They have a long memory.
But this isn't just about revenge. No, it's deeper. Voss completely changes the game with one simple, chilling question. He looks at the High Chancellor and asks her if she knows what happened to Earth.
And here's the bombshell. He says, neither do we.
Think about that. Humanity doesn't know what happened to their own homeworld. It wasn't destroyed. It was lost, scrubbed from every record in the galaxy. And Voss thinks the old council had something to do with it. Suddenly, this isn't a war of visions anymore. It's a galaxy-wide investigation.
This revelation just flips the entire galactic chessboard upside down. So what happens now? Well, that brings us to the new galactic order.
And you can see the power shift when you just look at the difference. The Council, all talk, all bureaucracy, letting threats like the Drek run wild. The humans, they take action. They eliminate threats. They protect the vulnerable. For a lot of planets out there, the choice is suddenly crystal clear.
And that's exactly what starts happening. Humanity's new empire, it's not being built by force. Planets are willingly joining up. They're choosing human protection over the Council's empty promises. It's less of an invasion and more a galactic realignment.
So in the end, humanity's return wasn't just some military campaign. It was the end of an era, the violent, messy, and totally unavoidable birth of a new one. And as the dust settles, the rest of the galaxy is left with one huge question. Are these new guys their saviors, or just a new kind of monster?